Hi everyone, Robin here from Gardening with Mama Bird. Today, temperatures are a little bit warmer than what they have been. It's been pretty chilly in the mornings and it's actually been too cold for me to be outside. We're lows in the 40s, highs in the upper 50s. And today I thought I'd take you on a little combo of things, January garden tour, and also at the same time, look to see at this time of year what type of evergreen interest I have in my garden. So this area here was one of my inspiration areas this past spring and summer, and this area has quite a bit of evergreen interest. So what has made it through, we've had some frost, and my Scotch heather, which is new, it'll be a year this spring that it's been in the ground, it's doing great. The Angelina sedum stonecrop, it's an evergreen. It's filling in pretty nicely, and if it does get a little bit out of control, it is very easy to take out. Let me show you how easy it just pops out. So you don't have to worry about it being invasive, but you do have to manage it. Then behind that I have the mondo grass, and the mondo grass gets about 6 to 10 inches high and about 8 inches wide. And I just really like the color combination here. So this has a lot of evergreen interest. The boxwood, I'm not sure what variety that is, but they don't get too tall because I didn't want something that got really tall over in this area. Back behind that is the dwarf Alberta spruce, and that gets about 4 to 6 foot tall, 2 to 3 foot wide. It's a nice large evergreen that I purchased quite a bit ago, and I was actually inspired by that evergreen and the other dwarf Alberta spruce in the back by a picture I found on Pinterest, and maybe I'll show you that in the video, what that picture was that inspired me to get those two and plant them in this area. Over here below that, we still have some evergreen, which is really tiny mondo grass. That stays smaller. Here I've planted some dichondra, which I wasn't sure if it was going to become invasive, but I thought, well, I'll give it a try. But that is evergreen, but you can tell in a few places it's kind of flopped over a little bit from all the rain. Back here is one of my favorite, which are the golf ball pittosporum. And those were actually in another area in my yard. They get 3 to 4 foot high and wide. One, when I transplanted, didn't make it, so this one's catching up. But these do need, in Northern California, zone 9B, the afternoon shade. They don't like a whole lot of sun or they'll get burnt. So keep that in mind. Even the tag might say full sun, at least in my area, it doesn't do well in the full sun. I planted some more mondo grass. Then I have the Nandina nanas. These I got on special at Lowe's one year, so I bought quite a few of them to do a little ring around this Japanese maple and then send a few out there on that end to extend it. And not only are these evergreen, but they also change color. So it's an evergreen that provides various colors throughout the cold seasons, and I've really enjoyed that. Over here on the trellis that I repurposed, I have a Carolina jessamine, and it is typically supposed to bloom in the spring. However, I'll go over on the other side and I'll show you. I have a lot of buds on this. So it's an evergreen vine that gets about 20 feet, and I keep twining it around that trellis and then pruning it off so it doesn't intertwine with the Japanese maple. Let me try another angle here and see if you can see all the little buds this Carolina jessamine has on it, ready to bloom. So this spring bloomer is blooming during the winter. Here along the front pathway bed, I planted a germander, which can take full sun. It's remaining as an evergreen, and it gets about 24 inches tall, and you're supposed to space them about 2 feet apart. So this will be my first spring and summer with this plant to see what it produces for blooms. As we come over here to the little bird bath area, below I planted some ground cover, and this ground cover is called Falkia Little Ears. On the tag it says annual, but it looks like it's making it through the weather here in zone 9B. I was a little worried if this was going to be an invasive plant. I haven't found yet, researching, whether it will be invasive, but I'm starting to see all these little runners that run under the ground and pop up. So I don't know if I'm going to be regretting this, even though I do love it, unless it's easy to pull out, or if it's going to be this thing that I'm always pulling on to keep it in check in the garden. Then over here, which was recently planted towards the end of summer, was the Wilma Goldcrest Cypress. It gets 6 to 8 foot tall and 1 to 2 foot wide, and it's looking gorgeous in the garden. I love the light lime green color next to the Nandina Nana. It's very pretty. So if you stand back in the garden and you look around, it does help to have that evergreen interest and not everything going dormant or having it lose its leaves if it's deciduous. Over here along the walkway that leads up to the front door and also goes the long stretch of garage wall here, I initially planted, not for evergreen interest was I truly thinking, but the Spire euonymus all along the garage wall. That was to soften the wall. And now I realize a few years later that it does provide some really pretty evergreen interest, and they're growing nice. Below that is the Lamian, and it does pretty well. Some of it will die back if it gets too soggy or things drop on the Lamium, like the hydrangea leaves there. So places will get kind of soggy and die out, but it will rejuvenate quickly in the spring. Back in here, when I shop for ferns, I try to find evergreen ferns, and those are starting to grow in nicely back in there to keep some green interest and a little bit of a contrasting color next to the Spire euonymus. Also recently added was the razzleberry fringe flower tree, and it is evergreen. It gives some color variation in the cold weather here, a little bit of a red tone to some of the leaves, and then when it's going to bloom, I actually think you can see in here, here's a little flower. They get the pink fringy flower style on them different times of the year. And the 2 pots that I have flanking the front door entry area, those didn't have the name of the boxwood type that are cut into this spiral form, but I believe they're a green mountain boxwood because they're a little bit taller. And I had a little spider mite infestation, and I think I've got it in check because they're looking much happier. This one got it the worst. So it's got a couple little skinny parts in it that are not so attractive, but hopefully that will fill back in as I do on this one. So I treated those and babied them for a season, and they're finally kicking back in. Here we have the jacaranda tree that I planted during the summer, and it is a semi-evergreen. So you can see that here in January, it still does have some foliage, and it doesn't quite lose it all, but it does start getting a little spindly looking. You can see some of the branches in here that have no foliage on it, and they'll break off, and then later in the year, some of them, when they have nothing on there, I will actually pop these off. And this one is my sweet broom tree. It really suffered this last year with the caterpillars eating on it, and they were difficult to manage as a pest in the garden. And I finally got the right treatment for it. However, I had to treat it much more frequently than I had hoped. And you can see over on this side, it really took a toll from the caterpillars and trying different treatments till I found the right stuff. And it's looking kind of bare over here. So I'm not sure if this is going to stay in the garden. As much as I love the blooms on it, they get this beautiful yellow blooms. It looks like a little Lorax tree in the garden. I may be removing it. It holds its leaves, and is evergreen. Also being one that is not a true green, but a blue green, so it gives a color variation. And I'm always trying to keep in mind that blue, yellow, red, green combo, which I think just brings the garden together and adds for a beautiful color.
Then out here along the sidewalk, I have 2 dwarf mock orange. They stay in a mounded form and they grow about 3 by 3. They are evergreen and you'll see some variations of green within them. These have done very well. I have one on each side of the yard. Then I planted some green gem boxwood. They grow about 2 foot by 2 foot and they should grow in a sphere shape with little maintenance to them as far as pruning goes. So these will line up my driveway and along my walkway to my front door. The only thing I think I'm going to have to keep a close eye on is the spider mites, so they don't do any damage to these boxwoods. I'm really excited to see how they grow in. The light green here, these are Dusty Miller New Look that I planted from seed. So these are a first experience for me going through the cold weather, and most of them are hanging in there. I don't know that I'll leave them in this area, but I am leaving them, and I'm going to try to transplant them to other areas in the yard to see how they do with transplanting too. Then over here I have some color in the garden, which are evergreen. These are, I believe the name of these Nandina are Gulfstream. I got them for a great price one year at Lowe's when they were on the clearance rack, and I really am loving how they fill in and the colors. So far for me, they have been berryless. There hasn't been any berries on them, which I'm pleased with because I don't really want any. Behind that, I have some green mountain boxwood, which should grow about 2 to 3 feet wide and 4 to 5 feet tall. These two were purchased on Lowe's clearance rack, and I think I got a really good deal on those. I think they were only about $10 a piece. They are just now starting to pick up on the growth rate, and I love how this is filling in over on this side of the driveway. The evergreens in my garden have developed over time. I have scored some great bargains on the clearance racks and then planted them in areas when I am inspired. So this is a great time of year for me to look over my garden to see where I want to add more evergreen interest. One thing on my list are some evergreen grasses, which will provide a new texture to my garden. Let me know what evergreen interest you will be adding to your own garden. I would love to hear your plans and ideas. As I stand back on the sidewalk and look at my front yard, I see lots of opportunity for more evergreens. I'm excited for the season to begin.